Welcome back to the wonderful world of Excel. In this video, we're going to talk about and demonstrate the use of the if function, the and function, the or function, and using structured references in formulas. We'll be working with a file that's named employees. So if you want to work along with me, go ahead, pause this video, open up your file, and let's get rolling. So let's just talk a little bit about functions for a moment. We've used the if function. It's been introduced to us once, right? Where we're asking a question. It's a logical function. We want to evaluate something. We want it to look at the cell, evaluate it, and then tell me, is it true or is it false? So when we look at the straight definition of if, well, all we need to say is the if function is a logical function that evaluates a condition, and then it returns one value if the condition is true and a different value if the condition is false. So that's all we're doing. For example, we might say, hey Joe, if it rains on Friday, do you want to go to the movies? So what are we going to do? When Friday comes, we're going to evaluate it to say if it's raining, and if it is raining, then we go to the movies. If it is not raining, then we would do something else. That's all an if statement does. So now we can also say and, because the if statement only looks at one condition. But if there are more conditions, then we need to figure something different. And the way that we do that is by using the and the or functions. The and function is a logical function that returns a true value if all of those conditions are true, and a false value if any of those conditions are false. So just remember, when we're using and, everything has to be true for it to occur. Now, on the flip side of that, if we use the or function, that just tells us we can look at multiple conditions, and it's going to give us a true value if any of them are true, and a false value if none of them are true. Okay? So we just have to kind of look at it how we want to do that. And we used a little bit of if and or when we were working with Access databases. So that may be familiar for some of you who have watched the videos and worked with Access. So those are the three basic functions that we're going to use on this. How do we, if we're only using one, looking at one item, we can use an if. If we have two or more conditions and we need to satisfy that all conditions are true, we use and. If we have multiple conditions and all we care about is whether any of them are true, then we can use the or function. So it can get a little goofy sometimes, but for the most part I think that it will work out okay. Alright. We want to look at we're going to look at this table right here. You notice it's a table because I have my table tools up here at the top. If I go to Analyze, there's some things we can play with there, or Design, and you'll notice our table name is called Employee up here in the top left corner, and our spreadsheet is called Employee Data. So it has some basic information that we have. We have an employee ID number. We have the employee's last name, when they were hired, when they were born, are they male or female, where they're located, are they full-time or part-time. See down here we have a part-time person. Do they have additional life insurance? Did they sign up to have more life insurance than what the company offers? This particular table and company has pay grades. So you might be hired in as an admin assistant or a software designer, but then you'll have different pay grades associated with that job skill. And that's what the 1, 2s, and 3s are here. You'll notice we have a pay type, and that is simply salaried or hourly, so S or H. And then what their annual rate is based on there. The health plan is an acronym for different various health plans that the employee can choose, and their years of service, which is a calculated field. You'll notice up here in the formula bar we use the dated if function, and they're comparing it to certain things here, right? So they're looking at C10, which is the date they were hired, and then they're looking at AB1. You'll notice that's a solid, and you can follow that over to see what's over the date over in that, and then the files that we have over here. So if we go over to AB1, you can see we have some different things here. So we have a date that's in the years of service as of a certain date, and then you have some other things. These bonus pay grades will be referred to later on. Alright, so what we're going to calculate first is we need to calculate the life insurance premium. So we're going to add a new field in column N, and we're going to call it life insurance premium. And you'll notice when I hit the enter key, it automatically added a new column to my table. That's one of the nice things about tables, is that they're not stagnant. It's very easy to add to the size. You know, either add new columns and categories or the different things that we want. Alright, so I want to make sure that you're clicked on cell N2, and we're going to do the if function. Now there's a lot of ways to enter functions. You can come up here to the insert. No, we don't want insert. We really want formulas here. If you come over here to formulas, the formulas tab, you can choose from the function library this way, in which case if is a logical function. So you could click on the down arrow, come on, and then you can browse, and these are the choices of logical functions that are available. So that's one way of entering your function. Another way of entering your function is if you know exactly what it is and how it works, you can type it directly into the cell, and you could say equals if, and then you would enter the arguments. That is another way of using it, but my particular favorite way is to use this little insert function icon right here, or you can say insert function here. You'll notice that there's also a keyboard shortcut, which is the Shift F3 key, that does the same thing. So when we insert our function, it does this. We can, if we know the name of our function, we can select it from the list, or we can choose, we can write, you know, what it is are we looking for. We know we want if, so we can just say if in the search box and say go, and down here in this bottom section it will tell us, it will give us everything that deals with if, and what it kind of helps us, right? Gives us recommendations. And you can click on the different items here and you can see what the descriptions are. So if we highlight if, and what is that telling us? Exactly what we talked about, right? It checks whether a condition is met and returns one value of true, another value of false. And that's what we want, so we say OK. Now, when we're looking at this function dialog box, and this is why I like to use it, is because if I can't remember all the various parts of a function, it helps me. Because it tells me, as you see, the cursor is in the logical test section, and so it tells me the logical test is any value or expression that can be evaluated as true or false. So that tells me what I need to put in this box. And then if I clicked on value of true, it gives me a definition of that and a value of false as well. And if you notice down here at the bottom of the dialog box, right now it just says formula result equals. As we fill this out, we'll see some things that will appear in this section as well as up here next to the word logical, any and any. We'll have some items that come up here as well. Alright, so for our logical test, what we want to do, first thing we would need to do is, well, we're not going to calculate, we need to calculate the life insurance premium. And the way that we're going to do that is, first of all, we have to decide, do they have more life insurance, right? Because you're not going to collect a premium if they don't have it. So that's our logical test. So we have to look at what are we going to do here. And so in our logical test, we're going to say this. H2 equals, now if you look up here, H2 is what? That's that additional life insurance area, right? So if it equals a yes, so we have to put that Y in parentheses, what do we want it to do? And you'll notice here my logical test comes over and it says, for that one, it's true. Now, if it's true, what do I want it to do? Well, if it's true, I need it to calculate the premium, right? So the premium is this. It's the amount of their annual salary times 0.1%. So the way that we're going to say here is we're going to say K2 times, remember that's an asterisk, 0.001. And you'll notice that gives me a number. And if it's false, I want it to just put a 0 in there. So we'll type a 0. Now, all we have to do is say OK. Wow! How did that happen? I entered one formula in this cell N2 and it did the entire table for me. That is the advantage of using a table when we're entering formulas, because it will do it, it'll populate it all for us. Alright, we need to format this for accounting number format. So we want to select our column and do what? How do we do that? Do you remember? Over on our Home tab, we can come over here and here's our accounting number format. So the accounting number format, remember, puts the $ and 2 decimal places in there. You'll notice that those zeros are now dashes. In that particular format, that's how it should appear. So that is perfectly on the money with what we want to do. So that was very quick and easy. If all we had to do was compare those cells and then have it do a calculation for us. Alright. We're going to add one more column. So come over here to O1 and we're going to call this 401k. So now we're going to calculate the 401k, what is this? We're going to look at that calculation. So first thing we have to do is we have to decide, because not everybody is eligible for a 401. So we're going to look at two things here. So we're going to first say, is the person eligible? So an eligible person means that they are full-time and they've been working for 1 or more years. So that's a little bit different, right? We're looking at two things, and because it's and, they have to have all of that information. So we're going to be looking at two sections here, and the first one is going to be the job status column, which is column G, and then the second column is the years of service column, or column M. Now, if those things are satisfied, then we will have a contribution to the 401k, to the 401 plan, and we'll calculate that contribution, which is similar to how we did the life insurance, right? And if not, we're just going to put a 0 in there. Alright, so let's do that. So cell O2, we're going to insert our function, and this time we're going to use our if function again. So you can select your if it's shown right here, otherwise do a search for it. Now, in the logical box, we're going to make a nested function, which just means we have more than one function going on at the same time. We're going to type the word and, put a parenthesis, and put the conditions for what we want. Right? So we said they have to be full-time and work for more than 1 year. So we're going to say G2 what? Equals full-time. Put a comma, so that tells them that's our next argument. Now we have to put the second part in there, and that's M2 is greater than 1 or equal to, right? Because we don't want to not exclude someone, and is greater than or equal to there. Close our parenthesis and hit the tab key. Alright, so now if it's true, what are we going to do? We're going to multiply their salary times 3%. So we're going to say K2 times 0.03. And if the value is false, I'm just going to put a 0. And now, once again, let's go ahead and format this again for the accounting. And that looks better. So once again, that entire formula you can see just populated all the way down the list. Alright. So we talked briefly about the OR function and what it's going to do. The next calculation that we're going to do is we're going to look at how much of a salary increase a person is going to get, right? So what we want to say is if a person is full-time or they work from home, then they're going to get a 4% increase on their salary. So that's what we're going to work with that. So now we're looking at two conditions, right? We're going to be looking at, are they full-time and do they work from home? And determine what happens on that one. You'll notice here that would be the location, right? So we have home, New Orleans, Nashville, Austin, Right? That's where they're working from. And then the second one is their job status, which is from there. So those two conditions have to be met in order to calculate the 4%. All right. So let's do the same thing here. We're going to do this calculation a little bit different too, so we're going to put a little quirk in there. All right. So we're going to call this one salary increase. We're going to hit enter. All right. We'll go ahead and start with our if function. And our first logical test. Now, so far what we've been doing is what? We've been using a cell reference, G2, K2, etc. But we could make it a little bit more visual and a little bit easier for us to look at. And the way that we would do that is we call it a structured reference. And we can enter a structured reference, which is like our column name, for example, or our sheet name, or our table name. And it just makes it visually a little bit easier for people who come behind us and work with these things to understand what we're doing in our calculations. Now, in this small spreadsheet, it doesn't matter so much, but in a really large spreadsheet and a large table, then that becomes a little more important. All right. So, here's where we go. Are we ready? Alright. We're going to do OR. Open our parentheses. Now, when we're going to use a structured reference, the important thing is that we use a square bracket, and we have to spell it exactly right in a square bracket. So we're looking at location, right? Because we're saying that if they work from home or if they're full-time, they get a 4% raise. All right. So let's do it. Here we go. So location equals home, comma. This is where the OR part comes into, right? Now we're going to look at that job status. So square bracket, job status. Remember, you have to spell it right, and that also includes punctuation with spaces. Equals full-time. Close our parentheses, so that's our AND logical test. Now, if it's true, what are we going to do? If it's true, we want to give them a 4% raise. So we're going to use the annual salary. So again, we're going to use a structured reference, so square bracket, annual salary, close the square bracket, times 4% or 0.04. If it's false, those people get a 2.5% raise. So we're going to do the same thing. Square bracket, annual salary, square bracket, times 0.025. We say OK. And once again magically appears. We'll format our column to our accounting. And I think that probably covers it for right now. So that's a good spot to stop in our adventure here. And I will pick you guys up on the next video.